Hey y'all, I'm Jayla Mackow, and I wanted to talk about one of the times that Jesus walked with me in my suffering. If I were to talk to the person I was in 2018, I feel like I wouldn't recognize her or even know what I was beginning to even think. I didn't understand my faith, and if someone asked me what I believed in, I feel like I couldn't answer directly or honestly because I wasn't sure myself. I I went to church, but I didn't really pray. I didn't understand the meaning behind it. And I I just didn't understand. I didn't know anything about it. And that was because I had never bothered to learn and I hadn't grown up learning all of that. And just prioritized a lot of school and sports, and that was what kept me going. That's what I looked forward to. I looked forward to having dinners with the teams, and I looked forward to practices and competitions. So my entire world flipped upside down when September 19th of 2018 happened, because that was the first time I dislocated my kneecap. Dislocating my kneecap was a lot of pain physically, but also mentally, because that turned my world upside down when my entire cross country season was canceled and I had to sit out of practices. I had to sit out of meets. I was cheering them on. Yes, they were supporting me. Yes, but I didn't feel like I was contributing enough to the team itself. I felt like I suddenly didn't belong. And that was just a very confusing time for me because I didn't understand why I was feeling like that, why I still felt so alone when I was within the team. It was fine. I was still going to practices, I was still going, but I just wasn't participating. And then so I told myself, I was like, stop thinking like that. Just go through physical therapy and you'll be fine, and you'll be able to have a bomb lacrosse season. Cross country's over, but that's okay. You still have the next 2 seasons, and lacrosse is coming and you can give it your all then. And so I worked my butt off in physical therapy, and I got cleared, and I got cleared on Christmas. And a couple days later, after a really long hike, I dislocated my kneecap for the second time. And after that hit, I was devastated. I was honestly crying my eyes out because I couldn't believe it had happened for a second time. Nevertheless, literally 3 days before preconditioning started for the season, and I was just really down on myself. How could I let that happen? Why was this happening? I was really overwhelmed. And a couple weeks later, my mom told me that I was going to go on a confirmation retreat for confirmation prep and all of that, and I didn't really think anything of it. Well, actually, I was a little struck by fear because I realized if I went to a confirmation retreat, that probably meant that a lot of the kids were going to confession, and the last time I had been to confession was for my first communion, and the thought of telling all of my sins to a priest genuinely terrified every single part of my being. I didn't know how to feel, I didn't know how to do it, I didn't know the beginning or end or any of the prayers, so it was just something I kept on putting off. It's unexplainable. But at that retreat, my heart opened up so many different ways. But still, when my youth minister said that it was time for confession, we went through the examination of consciousness, and yes, I did it with them, but when people started getting in line for confession, I stayed sitting. I instead wrote myself a little letter on why I didn't deserve to go to confession, because I didn't deserve to be forgiven for my sins that have piled up since first communion, how worse I've gotten, and literally everything bad that I could have written about myself, and everything that was not true, and just any excuse for me not to go because I was terrified. I was terrified out of my wits, and just and so that opportunity passed me by. And then a couple hours later, my youth minister gave a talk on a leap of faith he had taken, and how he and his girlfriend were celebrating her graduation from college, his now wife, and how he was really scared to go skydiving because this plane looked super sketchy. Like, the plane was like smaller than average planes, so it didn't look really professional, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And like, when he saw this plane, he immediately started having second thoughts because the plane was duct taped like bit by bit, and he wasn't sure about it. But then he let his wife go first, and he saw that she was all right, so he was like, all right, why don't I go? But then when they reached 10,000 feet in the air, he realized this is probably a mistake, and he started dangling his feet out of the plane, and he was like, you know what? Why don't I do it? And he jumped, and he described it as one of the most beautiful things he has ever seen, and he would have regretted it for a lifetime if he had like missed out, if he had backed out. And then he talked about how someone had asked him if him and his wife were ever gonna have kids or like prospects or anything like that. And he said that he wasn't sure, but he for sure didn't want any of his kids growing up in a world where like Catholic teens were wasting their gifts of confirmation. And like, as soon as he said that, and we started transitioning into adoration, and he said confession was open, I felt something tug at my heart that said, go to confession, it'll be all right. Like, and I felt like the courage seep through me, and I stood up, and I turned around, and I started walking toward the back to go to confession, to get in line. And I was shaking like a leaf, and I was so scared, and I didn't turn around because I knew if I turned around for a second, I wouldn't have gone anyways. So I waited in line. Like, I was questioning why I was there. Like, why was I there when that was the last thing I wanted to do on this retreat? And my answer came when I finally got into confession, and I had told the priest that it was my first time since First Communion, and I had started going into my sins. And the priest told me that Jesus was filled with joy that I'd come back to his arms, and I was back home. And he started explaining that there were several million different alternatives of us that could have existed, like different hair color, different eye color, different skin color, like different parts of your personality. Like, think of all the aspects of you that could have been slightly shifted but aren't. That's like billions, millions of different possibilities of yourself. And with those different possibilities, Jesus loved you, and he wanted you the most. And everything that you wished that was different about you, that was different about your life, he doesn't want. He wants you. And that just like struck my heart completely, because I had always compared myself to other people and like wished for a different life. And knowing that Jesus wanted me holy as like a mess, and he still loved me through and through, it was just mind-blowing. Oh my word. And when I went back to adoration in tears, it was like I was seeing my faith with brand new eyes, because I was able to see how much he loved me in that adoration, and it was just beautiful. Oh my gosh. And from that day, I started opening my heart little by little to the Lord, and I began to understand that when we feel alone in our sufferings and we feel that Christ has abandoned us, he never abandons us, because when he was on that cross, he felt that exact same pain that you're feeling right now, and he knows your heart so perfectly. He's carrying that cross right beside you. He's never left you. And when I started to like learn little bit by that, it was wow. I can't even describe it, because it's so amazing that a Lord like ours, so perfect like ours, is able to do that, like to love us so completely, and to strive to have his love be our identity, I think is our main goal. Because if people can see what Christ's love can transform and what all it can do, I think that would be pretty amazing. Thank you.